Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm the Director of Programming here at Wicked Queer, and welcome to our Sci Fi Shorts Program Q&A. I'm so excited to have most of the Shorts Program's directors and actors here. So this is the first year we've done this in a while. I forget which one of your films I saw first, and then I saw another, and then I was like, oh my God, I think we might be able to put a sci-fi program together, which we've tried for the last few years and just haven't had the content. So I'm super excited this kind of all came together, and we have a variety of ones, a lot about feeling isolated, and then the one from Austria just comes out of left field. And really, I really was so excited to put this in sci-fi because I thought it was more of like an uplifting one, along with Static Space too. All the women on Static Space are like, oh my God, this is like the cutest story ever. Like, we love it. All the female programmers are like, yes. But I'd love for you guys, I'll point you out, I'll go around and just talk about, just give us a little synopsis of your film. So James, we can start with you.
Yeah, hello. I'm the writer and director of Pillow Talk, which is about these two men who are on opposite ends of the world, and they're in this kind of like somewhat futuristic time where it's like kind of a quarantine where they have this device that's like a pillow that kind of simulates physical touch, and like you can hear the person that's on the other end that's connected to them, like kind of like dating app Omegle almost. And it just like kind of like a one night stand almost of these like two men just kind of bonding over their love for their respective art forms. Yeah.
Awesome. And how about John and Kate, both from Static Space? John, if you want to start.
Oh, dang it. I'm losing my voice. I'll do my best. My name is John Klein. I'm the co-director of Static Space and the co-cinematographer as well with Kate. I'll let Kate take the synopsis part of it since she's also the writer and the lead actress because she's amazing.
Thank you. It's about Jamie, who leads a sort of autopilot life in Indiana, freshly divorced, secluded, sort of by choice, but also by the nature of where she lives, and a mysterious voice coming in through her ham radio that sort of challenges a lot of the way she's been living her life and a lot of her opportunities moving forward.
Awesome. And is it Emil?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's perfect. I'm gonna read it because I don't want to mess it up. So after its space pod crashes, an alien telepathically calls for help, causing a grieving man to have hallucinations of his deceased boyfriend. That's pretty much it.
There's a lot more to that story than just that.
There is.
And Vicky, what about you?
Hi, yes, I'm the writer-director for Restore, and it's about Jason, who's the last man on Earth. He employs holographic technology to recreate his very last memory with his partner.
And Jasmine.
Yeah, my name is Jasmin Hangendorfer. I'm the director of Foodliacs, Tear the Sexes Apart. And the whole film is set in a laboratory, the Institute for Gender Normalization, very conservative, very scientific. They really want to split the world in two biologically genders, but then some kind of aliens maybe turn up and they only have really one thing that they can do. They can queer up people. And then
that's a good explanation. Yes. So let's go around and just I would love to know how you guys came up with all of your films and the ideas. So James, how did you come up with Pillow Talk?
Yeah, so I it was in the heat of quarantine, and I had not had any physical touch for the past like year. So I was just like, what I was feeling in the moment, I was just like, oh my gosh, what if there was like a device that could like simulate physical touch between like me and like some random person. And so I was just like, oh, that's a cool idea for like a script. And like, what about like incorporating like queer culture and gay hookup culture into it, and kind of adding in like a kind of like a sci-fi element with like this futuristic technology. So then it came to be that I just wrote it, and now here it is.
Awesome. And Kate, what about Static Space?
Yeah, So I'm an actor primarily in Chicago, and I had just written my first play, and it had been produced as part of a workshop in February of 2020. And so I was suddenly having all this interesting momentum in a new medium, and then it just all halted because COVID 2020. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And there was a book that I had read by John Cannon called Can You Hear Me? And John, the writer, had read my play, and he told me if I wanted to ever adapt his book to stage, I would be allowed to. And so it really spoke to me because the novel is definitely what it's based off of, but we've deviated a bit in the short film. But the idea of someone in Indiana and someone in space, and like the seclusion of both of their lives, both by choice, but by also like their circumstances, it certainly seemed like something that spoke to me at that time. And so I started working on that as a play. And John Klein, who is a filmmaker collaborator I've worked with before as an actor, read the play and was like, you'd be crazy not to make this a short film that we could actually shoot during pandemic. So I adapted it to make it COVID safe with one actor on screen at a time. If there was anybody else, they were always more than 6 feet away. And John helped to figure out how to make it safe behind the scenes with skeleton crew, and we just sort of went from there.
That's so interesting because I just did a Q&A a little while ago with Queer Docs, and it was that they had filmed most of their stuff during COVID, and we as the film festival we were like, I wonder what's going to come out from COVID, like what films are we going to get? And it's just been amazing because it really seems like all of you filmmakers were like, I'm just going to take my time and make something, and it's just been really awesome to see what's come out of that, artistic wise, for sure. Vicky, what about you?
So Restore is part of the second film because I'm in the graduate film school at Florida State University. So there's definitely certain requirements in regards to things we had to make sure that we accomplished. But I mean, aside from that, the creative aspects are kind of what we write. And one of the things I wanted to do while I'm at film school was kind of use that opportunity to take a stab at sci-fi because it's a genre I love, but always was too scared to do it. So that was definitely something that I was kind of holding in one hand, and then the other hand, sci-fi is also such a great tool to kind of talk about, our world around us without quite talking about it. Similar to how comedy can kind of poke at things without really hurting anyone's feelings or things like that. So I wanted to kind of use it as a sort of platform to kind of, very mildly address this sort of idea of like how we would really feel like if we really were the last person on earth with the problems that we have in our present time, would we feel differently about them? Would we almost miss the problems that we've had? So I try to utilize Restore to not just like connect with that special memory of those that you love, but he's also connecting with the things that hurt him, because what he wants is to bring everything back, not just the good moments. So, that was essentially the goal there with Restore, and just try to put the pieces together. And of course, being in film school, having certain limitations, also trying to find certain locations that really look desolate and things like that. So, but very happy with what
I have more questions coming up for you about your location and how you made this in film school because it's so good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jasmine, how about you?
Yeah, well, of course, my film also was made in pandemic times, like the other ones, I suppose. And I think there was like one thing that really hit me a little bit, like when we were in pandemic and there was not so much opportunity to exchange with other people, a lot of discourse came up in the internet, also a lot of hate speech, like all the discussions got so rude, and there was a big front that was really totally anti-feminist, anti-gender identities, anti-queer. So a lot of statements came up, and I'm not the person like that wants to have a discussion on Facebook over such topics and wants really to bring people down. And I don't do like discussions in tweets with 120 signs. I don't do that. My answer to all of this discussion and discourse is always making a piece of art or a film. And like one thing about my film is like all the statements inside of the film that are so conservative and heteronormative, like when people say things like, oh, now I have to translate something like, yeah, it's like your chromosomes are not like dices. It's like gender is just an abstract idea, whatever. And all these statements that I put inside of there are real statements that I found just inside of the internet, people just putting this shit out. And I was like, yes, I want to answer to that. And I want to show that there is more, of course.
Love it. And then you went to the next level on the second half of the film.
And then I wanted to see naked queer bodies and a lot of vulvas and glitter and revolution, of course.
Yeah, we were going back and forth because we also have a program called GTFO. It's kind of like, what did I just watch? And we're like, oh, that would be perfect for that. But then I was like, no, I would like to put something more lighthearted into the sci-fi. But yeah, everyone on the team was like, this is awesome. And Emil, what about you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to piggyback on what Vicky said, that I find like sci-fi is a great way to approach certain subjects. And I wanted to make something about suicide and grief because I went through it maybe like 10 years ago with a boyfriend of mine that decided to end his life. And I was looking for a way to talk about that without being too melodramatic. And I'm a fan of sci-fi, so I really wanted to merge both ideas together. And this is where this story came from. And I actually met with a potential producer before shooting. And she was completely against the sci-fi aspect. And she was like, it's not doable. You can't do it. You should rewrite it and just tell a story about grief and suicide, but with like remove all the sci-fi elements. And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do.
You're like, look, yeah, I made it.
Yeah, exactly.
James, I have a question. I love the color palette that you chose for the two different characters. You know, one was really more vibrant in yellow, and then the one in Tokyo was more blue. What was your thought and choice behind that?
I really wanted to, since the colors are so like drastic, I just really wanted to show that they're in two completely separate like locations, like two like completely different worlds. And I really like want to show that one was on one end of the earth while the other was on the entire opposite end. So kind of like during like golden hour sunset, and then during like early morning like blue hour. So I really wanted to contrast with that and like play with like the split screen aspect, which was one of the main reasons that I wanted to like mess around with like the colors to see like how I was able to contrast completely but kind of make something cohesive at the same time. And so I really wanted to play with the colors. Also, I forgot to mention that I made this in school for like my senior thesis film. Forgot to mention that the last time, but yes.
Awesome. And how was it? Because your actors were alone. Obviously, they didn't, you know, as you were filming them. So how did you do that? How did they play off of each other?
Luckily, they were able to be there. So I shot it within 4 days, and the first 2 days was one house, and the other 2 days were another location. So the actors were there the whole time. They were just like kind of like either like tucked around a wall and like playing off of each other, like being able to read the lines back and forth. So they were able to kind of have that connection, but I made sure that they weren't ever to be able to see each other, but they could always hear each other. So they were able to like kind of like feel out where the moments needed to be longer together and where they had to be shorter and quicker, and just kind of like play off of each other, which is really cool, instead of like someone from just like on like a PA like reading the lines. Like it was nice to have like the actual actor there.
Cool. So Vicky, how did you get that location? Where does this location exist? And it's just such a high production value. I'm just so intrigued how you did this all in school.
I mean, you know, it's 5 minutes down the street. I got very lucky. And so the way that kind of schedule worked out in that specific moment, I mean, we shot these films last summer, and but during the spring of that, we kind of jumped from assisting in thesis support while also preparing for our summer film. So there's always a lot going on. And so I probably contacted definitely I mean, tens and tens of like just about at least 50 locations trying to find something like this. Because the original vision was just, it was supposed to be kind of at a university, and it's like, okay, who has time for that sort of VFX? I don't. So just kind of, I'm at Florida State, so we're in Tallahassee, Florida. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's just, I did a lot of driving around. You know, there was abandoned factories, there's just quite a few abandoned buildings and hotels. And I was just contacting all of them and just try to say like, hey, anybody, you know, anybody love a movie, you know, you want to support this cause? And funny enough, the closest location, which ended up being where we shot, which was an abandoned Winn-Dixie, ended up just being the one who was just thumbs up. I mean, supported the university. That always helps us on our side. We tend to get help from other alumni who just stayed in town. And funny enough, I mean, like, you know, the location is kind of one of, I mean, it helps so much, as you mentioned, with that production value, but I was actually pretty resistant at first. I was like, a grocery store. It's not what I initially envisioned. And then, but just the moment we got that first location scout into just, you know, kind of just seeing how it was still so laid out and just really run down. And there were still like, magically, there was not much there still, but still just happened to be at least one aisle of freezers. And I was able to kind of shape the story around to fit that location. And it was just like, okay, this is a golden goose kind of thing. There's no way I'm going to throw away this opportunity. And you know, I just sort of made a bit of a rewrite, and I mean, it's a Crunch Fitness now. They've totally remodeled it.
Oh,
right after
you got
that.
it right in time.
So I mean, certain things, it's kind of like that those magic moments in movie making where just things just happen to line up, and then you need to just do it before you lose that opportunity. So I could tell that you know, I would never get this chance again. So yeah. But it's down the street. It's just 5 minutes away.
Now it's a Crunch Fitness.
Now it's
Jasmine, going off of what you had said before about, you know, you took a lot of what was said on Facebook and all these things, and you actually put it in the film. There's obviously a lot of layers to this film. Can you just talk about like what you would want people to take away after they've seen it?
I think, what do I want to take people with them when they watch the movie? It's a good question. Well, I think to really always see that there are always ways to answer to such things, or to such a discussion or a discourse, that there's so many ways that you can actually start a revolution, that you can be political. There are so many ways to it. It's just some people go to a demonstration, other people, I don't know, make those Facebook things happening and discussions. And yeah, I'll do films and think maybe it's like, I always want to deal with humor. You know, when I talk about serious things, like I did in this movie, it's also a movie about underrepresentation of queer bodies, queer lust, queer desires, queer sexualities in medicine, in research. So this is also like kind of an underlying topic, I think. But in the end, I think I want to pack it in a humorous way so people can watch it and maybe start a little bit of thinking. Of course, I want to have sexy bodies inside of it and a lot of visually things that people can take away.
There was a lot of sexy bodies going on. There really was.
Yeah, there was. Actually, first when I made the film, I had like this really dreamy vision that I could kind of shoot kind of a porn thingy, like an orgy. This was like my main intention, but and pack it, of course, in quite a lot of discourse. But in the end, it turned out it was pandemic. People were not so much into making out at orgies, even for a film. Even if they were tested, they were not so much into it. So I was like, okay, this was starting a whole process then with the whole crew, with the team, with the performers. And in the end, actually, these were just like one-to-one sessions. As in one-to-one, it's like cameraman, me, and the performer. And I allowed them to do whatever they want in front of a camera. I still, of course, was very much into that. They did really quite arousing things, but of course others decided to do not so and not show off everything.
Mhm.
But for me, this was really, really a cool process in a really cool way. And in the end, it's not an orgy, but it's a different kind of film, and I still love it.
You should. You should. I can't wait for you guys to see.
I'm very curious to see it now.
It's no orgy. It was not happening. Next time.
Kate, I have a question with the character's backstory, because when I was rewatching it yesterday, obviously the first scene is she's in bed alone, she looks over, and then I noticed she still has her wedding ring on. So what's her backstory to what happened? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, obviously, the fun thing about shorts is that we don't actually have to answer anything. I'm happy to. I always love to give you what I've got. But it's my favorite thing, I think, about it is that there's so many people that have seen it who have been like, well, you know how she broke up from her wife and da-da-da. And I was like, oh, is that what you think happened? And it's fun that everyone takes a different impression.
I thought it was a husband.
And that is the intention. That is so. When I wrote the play, we have a lot more time to like go into all of this.
Mhm.
So it's a husband who in my opinion, in my thoughts, left her, and I think she had defined herself in this relationship. And in Indiana, growing up there, I feel comfortable saying that Indiana is really good about defining who you are for you, unless you have reason to stand up and question it. And I feel strongly that Jamie married a man young, because that was the expectation. And when he left her, she was sort of fending for herself for a while and just trying to figure out how to get by and what an identity looks like, especially as someone who's bisexual and who grew up in Indiana and didn't identify that for myself until very late in my life. It is something that's very easy to overlook. So I think it's not really until she's starting to have this conversation with an astronaut in space who she knows is lesbian. And I think once those conversations start happening, you can start recognizing in yourself these like sort of tantalizing feelings. And so her backstory, yes, I go off in detail, but yes.
It explains a lot. No, because I feel like, isn't there a line when she calls herself a bi girl?
She does say growing up
Yeah.
in Indiana, bisexual, but I also think that's actually a line that's also in the play. And I think that's also one of her awkward attempts at sort of inserting, like, by the way, here's who I am, in case you're curious. Because I also know, like, especially when you're, in your 30s and finding that, you're really also sort of stunted in, like, teenage years. And so, like, trying to find ways to actually, like, flirt with someone you're interested in of the same sex comes out very awkward preteen, very stumbly and strange, and it's embarrassing. And I think we had left that line in, but we really didn't include that whole thing because I think it muddies the waters that is their relationship, which I love.
Yeah. Awesome.
But thank you for asking.
I go back and rewatch everything before I do the Q&As, because I appreciate, because I'm a filmmaker and you do Q&As and you're like, did you actually watch my film? And you know what I mean? It's like, no, I'm going and I'm writing details because we chose it for a reason,
This one of my favorite things about the play is you get such a sweep to it in terms of her interactions with her ex-husband as well and things like that. And part of the challenge, I think, for Kate and I both, for Kate especially as the writer, was like, how do you parse and pare those things back to make a short, something consolidated and focus the energy so much on Jamie and on what's going on in the barn. And so it allows, as Kate said, it allows you to kind of like, anyone can kind of invent part of those backstories. Kate as an actress and as the writer, as a co-director, can make those choices for herself, but the audience can bring their own kind of experience and their own specificity to it. So you have this specific story that winds up being more universal because of those little purposeful omissions that you can get, so yeah.
Yeah, because we were talking about how it definitely felt, and because of her just isolation, both of their isolations, it was definitely COVID related to us when we were watching it, for sure.
I'm glad that it spoke to that. That's awesome.
I want to say something quick about James, because James, you talking about having the actors in the same apartment but different like rooms, or like not being able to see each other. Like we had a similar sort of situation. We want to make sure that Mariah, who plays Noah, could speak to Kate directly, but we couldn't have her in the same space because she wasn't able to get tested early enough to be there, and it was still height of pandemic. We didn't have vaccines yet, but we had like a COVID officer. It was the whole thing. So we wound up, Mariah called us on Zoom, and Kate wore an earpiece and I wore AirPods, and we funneled Mariah's audio to her own recorder at her apartment and to our audio mixer's recorder via Zoom. So Kate could hear Mariah, Mariah could hear Kate. I could give them direction, but there was like a delay. It was a whole crazy thing to do the same kind of stuff that James, that you were doing as well, just like having the actual actors interact with one another. Like, I'm so glad you spoke to that too, because that's like such a challenge to deal with that, making sure the performance feels real. And that was such a cool thing to hear that you also dealt with that in a different way as well.
Yeah, that's so cool that we had very similar experience. That's crazy that it was via Zoom. That's wild.
We were also, I mean, we used that live audio. We recorded that and used that actual footage. But the fun thing is that there was also times where our audio wouldn't, like, I would lose her. So like, I think we actually have some takes where like you can really see like Jamie and me are both sort of like leaning in, really trying to hear what's happening and what's being said. And those are just like the little things. There's a lot about speaking to isolation where it's also all about really trying to lean into each other and really listen for the first time, which is a challenge, I think, for us as a society who haven't really been listening actively to each other in such a long time. And now it's just so much more important than ever.
Definitely. Emil, I was really liked from the beginning when you had the three characters kind of stumble upon whatever this, device is. For me, I took it as the lead character trying to get some closure out of what happened. But I would love your kind of take on it.
Well, just like Kate said, I like short films. It's good that you can like not explain everything and it's fine. And like I've heard different interpretations from different people, and they're all like great, and I'm okay with all of them. But I did have an idea too when I wrote, just like Kate. So like I can tell you what the real thing is, but I'm totally okay with people understanding different things too. But yes, it is about closure, and the pod that crashes is an alien that is in distress, and he's basically not compatible with our atmosphere, and it's the pod that's keeping him alive, him or they or whatever the gender of the alien is. And the pod is losing power all throughout the short, and he desperately calls for help telepathically, and he uses people's memories to attract them to the pod. And so the main character, who's recently lost his boyfriend, starts having hallucinations of his boyfriend. And through the hallucinations, he ends up understanding that, first of all, it's the alien speaking and not his boyfriend. And second of all, he does get some closure out of it, as you said. And the short ends with the alien dying. And the main character, who held on to like the deceased boyfriend's like a locket. I don't know how to say it in English, but
yeah, like a necklace.
A necklace. Yeah. That's it. He like decides to put it on at the end, and it's just, and walks away from the pod. And it was like my way to say that like he has had his closure and he's ready to move on now. Because through the movie, he like toys with the locket, but he never like puts it on. And at the end, he decides to put it on and then exits.
Was there a significance with the number 302 on the door?
There isn't. It was just to well, because there is a scene where he describes finding the body, and that scene is exactly what happened to me. like I found the body and I called 911, and 911 asked me to I'm sorry if it's too graphic for the people here, but I had to unhook. They wanted me to like get my boyfriend off the rope and try to resuscitate him, but he had been dead for like multiple days, obviously, and like I knew there was like no reviving possible. Um, and so I was kind of arguing with the person from 911 saying like, I'm not gonna like try to resuscitate him. There's no point. Like he's been there for a long time. And that scene is in the short where he tells the story to his mom. And I have completely went off track. I forgot what the initial question was.
It was just the number.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, it was just to signify that this is the apartment where it took place. And when we see the door later with the same number, it's just to make a link between real life and the hallucination.
So did you find making this film cathartic for you?
Well, it happened to me, like the real life event happened to me like a long time ago. So like I have like moved on and I'm okay to talk about it and I'm fine with it. But so it wasn't cathartic in that sense, but it was a story I've been wanting to tell for a while, but I was looking for a way to tell it without being like overly dramatic, because I'm not a dramatic person, and I don't want people to be like crying while watching my shorts, my short. And I've like showed it to friends and before they watch it, I'm like saying like, I hope like this is not too depressing, because I didn't want it to be too depressing. Like I wanted to be able to talk about grief without it being like something that was hard to talk about. Does that make sense?
And yeah, I do. And I think you definitely nailed it in that way,
Thank you.
as far as how your short was done. For sure. James, you wrote in your director's statement, I believe as a society, we have moved past the simple acceptance storylines and are ready for more dynamic LGBTQ plus narratives. If we want to normalize queer characters, we have to treat them as normal characters. I loved that. And I would just love for you to expand more on that, because I think, obviously, I see a lot of films, and a lot of films sometimes we get our coming out stories, and not that they're not important, but like, you want more than that. There's more than just that one part of who we are. So, I mean, I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I just really find it like interesting that like just like me as like a gay person, like when I came out, it was like years and years ago in high school, and like I told my parents, they're like, oh yeah, we know. That was my coming out story. So it wasn't like anything, like I'm just so much more than my coming out story. And like I just really want to show that like queer people have stories past them just coming out. Like they have like other difficulties, like they experience other things than just like them like experiencing who they are. Like for me, my own personal journey, I'm comfortable with my sexuality, and I want to show that like other people are that way too. And like the way that I can do that is through these characters that I put in my films. And I just really want to show that like queer characters can be a lot more have a lot more conflict outside of just them coming to terms with who they are and who their sexuality is.
I love it. Vicky, I really found your lead character so captivating, and you just felt for him. I wanted to know kind of where you found him, kind of what backstory did you give him, because I think he was just amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you. He's actually one of the others. So I'm in the MFA production program, and he is in the same year, but he's actually in the MFA writing program. And when we start at the film school, they kind of unify us together to kind of also give the writers a bit of a taste of what production is like. So it kind of gives them a little bit of insight of when you're writing certain things, to be a bit mindful or something. So just, we've had some classes together, things like that. I've seen him work. And one thing I noticed was that we have to do weekend projects and things like that. And he was always really willing to participate. I mean, he would be considered a non-actor. He doesn't have any professional experience. But I saw that he was always just wanting to participate and get more experience. And so after seeing him in sort of like a dozen weekend projects, and I was looking for, it was getting to that time, I wrote the script. And this is, I think this is the first time I wrote gay male characters. It was just something that I was just seeing a little bit more specifically in that way. So, and then I had thought of him, and also he kind of, was tall and had these other features. So I was like, okay, let me just see if he would be interested. And I just had a conversation one-on-one and was like, is acting something that you're serious about like pursuing? Because there is so much more there than just weekend projects, this could be an opportunity for both of us. And I mean, he was excited and committed to the role and things like that. So, I mean, it was just kind of both of us sort of like working together and just kind of showcasing that out. I mean, he was like it's so interesting seeing just how amazingly he's just so stoic in the film, and
I
just
can't believe he doesn't have acting experience. You gotta tell him that. I loved him.
No, I mean, he was even nervous when we premiered it, and I said, I mean, you did beautifully. I mean, you don't, it's just like out of this world between the location and you. I mean, those things two came together, and it was. I mean, he's such a lot of fun and such a great energy and very comedic. So we're just having these sort of dark moments, and then in between takes, it's just like, okay, we gotta lighten the mood a little bit because everyone's getting a little sad.
Mhm.
So, but I mean, just try to like, in regards to Jason, kind of giving him more of a backstory. I mean, we weren't able to do too much just because a lot of this is kind of like happening on the fly. But the thing that was important for Jason is that like he is definitely certain in who he is, and he accepts himself, but he also accepts the world around him, and that includes people who don't accept who he is.
Mhm.
So it's kind of sort of this back and forth of just like, and that's sort of the arc of the character in just 5 minutes, right? It's just
I know. I was like, when it ended, I was like, that's it? Like, I want more.
yeah, that because the film is essentially him building back the pieces and reliving this memory, and that memory is when he realized he was in love with his partner, and he had that realization during a moment of strife in a way.
Mhm.
And he both stands up for him. I want Jason to be someone who stand up for his partner and show his strength, with his body and with his voice, but it's kind of like, and then he kind of like laughs at the antagonist, and it's like, yeah, but you're nothing to me,
Mhm.
and that sort of moment internally kind of makes him turn around and say the 3 magical words that we all wish to hear. So that was a bit as much as I can do in such a short amount of time, because in the summer we shoot 24 films, just more or less back to back. So it was just very brief conversations just to kind of get that out of him. And I mean, he did a spectacular job. Gerard was great.
24 films.
Yes.
A person?
No, 20. We each student gets to direct a film in the summer, and there's 23 actually to be exact. And we go back to back. Yeah. So, and that's just production. Then we did we did post production after that. So it's a lot, but it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Jasmine, Emil, and John, I have some cinematography director questions. I'll start with you, Jasmine. The shot where it's the girl and it's the around shot that goes for quite a while. One, I'd love to know your choice on that. And two, how difficult was that to shoot?
Actually, it was not that bad. It was a decision right on scene. I have really to admit, because we ran out of time. And then my production manager at the set said, okay, let's maybe try to do this roundabout shot. Maybe let's see if it figures out because time is running out. And I said, oh my God, should we really do that and try that? But actually the person doing camera is so great. Actually, he's so into it. He's such a nerd on that, that he totally, he doesn't read a line of the script normally. He just does it. And he had the feeling for the persons in the right moments. He really were totally trying to focus on them, and he got the right moment. I think we shot this scene only twice.
No.
Really, I was, and then on the second time he said, yeah, well, I think we have it now. I was like, oh, okay, good. Yeah.
That's the cinematographer you need.
Yeah. Totally, yes.
That's amazing. Emil, kind of the same question with the hallway slow moving dolly shot, with him sitting in the chair. One, what was your choice behind that? And two, did that take multiple takes or two maybe?
No, we did quite a few takes for that one. But it's heavily inspired from Hereditary. So I don't want to take all the credit because there was lots of Hereditary in it. And in Hereditary, for those who have seen it, there is the daughter that dies somewhere in the movie, and the mom describes finding her before the audience actually sees the scene. So you imagine what happened through the mom's telling of it, and I thought that was so powerful and it fit perfectly with the intention in my short. So I decided to go this way too, and have the main character and just describe the scene without us seeing it and without the audience seeing it, and just have a long, very slow traveling towards him as he describes it. I think it makes it even more impactful if you don't see it in reality.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really, really love that shot. John, so going back to you saying you had a lot of kind of COVID protocols and complications, how was it trying to film? It does seem like most of it was outdoors. And I guess at the time, obviously, you're basically Kate by yourself for most of it. But when there was other people in the scene, how did you guys go about doing that? And was this filmed in Indiana?
No, it was filmed in Mount Carroll, Illinois, which is about 2.5 hours west of Chicago.
Okay.
It feels like Indiana. And we were very lucky with the location because we had scouted places in Indiana and Illinois, and it wasn't that the locations wouldn't have worked, but just from a sense of feeling, we'll just say welcome in those areas, given the subject matter. We didn't want to have to sort of withhold things about the movie to get people to be welcoming to us about filming a queer-centric love story in this location. The location wound up being Timberlake Playhouse, which had, obviously because of COVID, was not putting on shows at the time. They had would have summer camps and things like that. So they had cabins, and each member of the crew could stay in their own place. And they had a little cafeteria so we could socially distance in. We had a prop shop. We brought woodworking things from the prop shop in this barn that was like an event space, but that was open so that we could leave it open and have airflow and things like that. Where they had that, everything was there in this rural expanse. So it wound up being perfect for that. But in terms of the social distancing and the filming of it, because it was such a small crew, we were able to sort of make that work very easily. We stayed on long lenses for a lot of it. Things like operating with a longer tripod arm so I could push the camera along the Dana dolly, just to maintain social distancing as much as possible. Wiping down gear was always a very silly thing that we would do. Felt like at the time we didn't know kind of what all this was.
Yeah.
Our COVID officer, hey, timer's going off, time to wipe down the tripod and the C-stands and everything else. So there were a lot of those kinds of things. In addition to obviously the communication between Mariah and Kate, that we had to sort of figure out how to make that part of it work. All of that, I think, led to the shots, the cinematography, the performances kind of taking on that isolation feeling.
Yeah.
So there are these wide shots of Kate in the barn. There are these shots where you have this, you know, the depth of field is very shallow. So everything feels very, very isolating. You know, every shot kind of had that extra emotional heft to it. Like I've shot films where we shot in the dead of winter. And so it was very easy for the characters to simulate being cold because, well, it was real damn cold. And I feel like bringing in those emotional components that we were already sort of feeling and that we had to deal with on set, all that kind of bled into the cinematography, the production design, the performances. So it was like it kind of became instinctual to us on set. Oh, this is where the camera has to go because this is how it feels right now. And that was kind of what guided a lot of our pre-planned decisions. We kind of fed into that and kind of let that guide us sometimes.
It's amazing what you guys came up with during like literally filming in like the heat of all of it. That's amazing. Kate, for you, how is it to write, you know, co-direct and, you know, kind of star in a film? And so you obviously have a lot of say of what happened. So like, how did you find the process for that?
It was, I mean, it was very challenging, obviously. It also, I think in each hat that I wore, I thought was the only hat that I would wear, or like the last hat that I would wear. So I think it was easier to write it thinking, well, I'm not going to be in it or direct it. It's probably not even going to get produced. Like John thinks it will, and he's sweet, but we'll see. And so then like once, you know, I got it all written and John's getting all excited and talking about all these things, and then he's asking me if I want to direct it. I'm like, I've never directed anything. And so I'm thinking about it and I'm not sure. And I was like, I don't know, I kind of thought I would just maybe act in it, if anything. And he's like, great. He's like, act in it. And then I took on also co-directing down the road. And I would say if I knew I was going to wear all of those hats, it would have been overwhelming and I might not even started. You know, I might have just gotten Tharn and sat back and been like, it's easier to eat popcorn and watch movies during COVID. So I'm glad that I took it one step at a time. I'm really grateful, obviously, for John Klein. Like there's no one, I've collaborated on a lot of projects. I've never collaborated with anyone as well and as easily as John. And it really makes a difference in trying to get something made, is how well you can communicate, how well you respect each other, and how encouraging the other person is. I'm super grateful for that. I think if I had known that I was going to actually get this thing made, I would have written more ambitious things in than just she eats M&Ms. That was like, I wrote that in specifically because I was like, I'm going to have to get, like, someone's going to get me M&Ms. Like, I love the idea of writing myself eating food. And now I'm like, man, I could have like ridden a horse or something. So
that would have been amazing.
You could not have done that.
I mean, that's probably accurate.
Veto power.
Well, we're talking about maybe a feature film down the road. The horse might make an appearance. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I want to know, are they together? Are they happily ever after in Indiana? Are we,
you know, if you're
going to space with her?
If you're out there in Boston and you know any good theaters, I've got a great script ready to go. So
yes. All right, lastly, I'd love to know what you guys are doing next. If you have anything in the works, anything you guys, you know, want to talk about. James, let's start with you.
At the moment, I just graduated school and
Congrats.
Thank you. My diploma's sitting on the desk behind me because I have to drop it off somewhere, but it's there in a box. But yeah, right now I'm currently just living my new adult life and just trying to get inspired by new things and just writing a few other there's like random short films and like maybe doing a feature in the next like year or two. But yeah, I've always wanted to do a musical, so now I'm working on a hip hop like short film musical. So that's what I hope to do in the near future. Yeah.
Awesome. Jasmine, what about you?
Well, there are actually two things coming up. 2 weeks from now, I'm also like the creative head of a film festival here in Vienna, the Porn Film Festival.
Yes.
Well. What should I say to that? a lot of smutty things are happening. So actually, it's just 2 more weeks, and you may know it when the film festival is around the corner. Like, it's crazy times. Yeah, but the program is settled and everything, and also the side events, so it will be a hell and a blast. I'm looking forward to that. And actually, 2 days ago, I got my next funding for the next movie. So it was granted, and I'm very happy. And it will be, I think, a movie about a kind of action movie. I think it will be a little bit. It will be about kind of a fight between second and third wave feminism. So like they are arguing and they're doing taekwondo kind of things and whatever. And like, yeah, let's see what they come about with.
Love it. Congrats on getting a grant. That's amazing. Vicky, what about you?
Alrighty, so tomorrow actually I start the first day of production.
Of course you do.
This meeting came right at the perfect time. I couldn't have been more lucky. Yeah, I've been for the last 3 weeks, I've been pre-production for my thesis film, and we start production tomorrow. It's 7 days of production plus a day off, so there's 8 days there. And yeah, but I mean, you know, this semester, this spring semester has just been jumping from different positions, and I've done production design twice and I've done sound twice. So I'm glad that my film is kind of at the end of our cycle here at the end of the semester, because I've been able to just kind of take from all of those experiences and try to enhance my story as much as possible. And yeah, so I mean, this story is about an impulsive romantic teen that finds out her first love is being sent away. So she plans to rescue her girlfriend from the airport with her friends. So we're going to be shooting at, you know, in Valdosta, Georgia. We're going to be shooting in Cairo, Georgia, and a couple of places around town. We have a bit more flexibility with our thesis films, and just different places that we can go. You know, and in support of the story. So I'm about to, I'm a bit tired, but the film's really starting about to begin. And then yeah, then I do first AD on one other film, and then we in the summer we go kind of into post-production, where yeah, we have a couple of weeks to edit the picture, and then I also am the sound designer for my film, so kind of do that, and then we're about to graduate July 30th, and they're going to spit us out. Yep.
I think you have a very bright future.
Well, thank you so much.
Kate, what about you?
I've just finished my 3rd play. I just finished writing that. I'm really excited about it. It's about a female novelist who writes under a pen name because she finds that she has more success if people think she's male. But she's discovered now that she has a problem with all of her Twitter audiences thinking she's a man who hates women. And so she has to create a strong female central character and doesn't know how. And that sort of came about from my interest in women who write male characters, like as a regular ongoing theme for themselves, and like where that comes from. And I'm always interested in sort of exploring that. So I have that play just finished, and I'm hoping that gets a home. I've got a couple of theaters who've been asking about it. And then Static Space, the play, was just produced as part of a workshop series. So that was at Orlando Shakes Theater, which was a great theater. And I'm hopeful that finds a home here shortly too. And then, of course, John and I are talking about making Static Space the feature. But all we need is a space shuttle, and we should be good to go.
That's it.
So
easy. That should be easy to find. Get Vicky
There's
on.
always
She'll find you a space shuttle.
Always something. Yeah, so Kate and I are working on that. The Static Space is still in festivals as well. I have a feature called Adult Children that my writing partner Steve and I are hoping to co-direct towards the end of the summer. Working on that. And I teach at Elmhurst University as well. I teach film, so that takes up a lot of my time. Hoping to do some VR. I wrote a grant, hoping to do some VR work, like VR filmmaking work over the summer as well. And I have 3 children, so that's like the rest of my time. So, so it goes. Yep.
And Emil, what about you?
I just want to tell Kate and John that I built the space pod in my short with a friend in a backyard. So anything's possible. You can build your own spaceship. It's doable. As for Stranded, I dream of one day either making a feature or a limited series with it, where you would see different characters who hallucinate different things, and they would all have their own like storyline, and it would all be centered on the pod. So that's the dream. In the meantime, I am working on a sketch comedy pilot with drag queens. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Nice. Awesome. You guys, moving forward, if you have any queer films in the future, just feel free to reach out to me. We always love having, alum and continued directors to be in our programs. So really appreciate you guys coming out. Sci-Fi will be on Zerb TV for the entire month, so please check it out. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone. It was